Hey guys, welcome to the Youth Fitness Podcast. Topics on youth fitness with a focus on doing what's best for kids. Brought to you by the Martin family, the developers of the Brand X Method, and the Athlete Coach Network.
Youth need great coaches now more than ever. Brand X has dedicated themselves to doing what is best for kids for over 2 decades and now offers mentoring, education, programming, and resources in one smart package to empower coaches to efficiently deliver world-class youth programs. Check out their plug-and-play options and join the Brand X family today. You plus Brand X equals youth program success.
All right, welcome back to the Youth Fitness Podcast. Today, Keegan and I are going to discuss our vision of where fitness was when we were kids and perception of what that looked like, not just from our perception of our training, but also what the experience was and what it looks like now for youth athletes and what the future might look like as well for youth athletes as that landscape changes over time. So Keegs, if you would like to kind of touch on maybe your experience a little bit as a youth athlete, and now, you know, you've been doing functional training and strength training for over 20 years. You know, what did that look like when you were a kid, and kind of how has that changed?
Yeah, I think specifically we would just want to get a little bit of a comparison from 20 years ago to today, right? And kind of what the training modalities look like, and then what was available to us then versus what we have now. I think it's vastly different. We've seen a huge uptick in technology and the integration of technology inside of training, which we'll get to. But I think when I was a kid, and our training was very similar, but when I was a kid, all we really knew was go hard, go fast, right? Like it was AMRAPs, it was 4-time workouts, and maybe we would do 2 a day, and we were just pushing high intensity 100% of the time, right? Like 6-7 days a week, we were going as hard and as fast as we possibly could for an allotted amount of time.
Zero warm up.
Yeah.
Zero movement prep.
But I think as a young kid, right, like we were able to do that. Now going from 0 to 100 like that with zero warm up is a very different story. It feels very different until things get
30 years old hits differently for sure.
Definitely does. But yeah, that was kind of the basis of our training, right? Like, yeah, we would look at, okay, yesterday we did wall balls and squats. So today let's do, burpees and kettlebell swings, and then the next day let's do, some core stuff and maybe a longer run, or, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, there was some rhyme and reason as to like the movements that we were putting together and what was coming next, but it was go hard, go fast. And that was like really the only modality, right? And then we saw this kind of change over time, specifically in the functional fitness space, where it was like, okay, we have high intensity and we've been doing that for quite some time, but now let's integrate strength training before our high intensity, right? And then time went by and we realized like, okay, well, maybe we should be spending time doing some high level gymnastics skills and practicing movement along with our strength training, and then do some high intensity on top of that. And then even further down the road, we realized, well, we need to protect our joints and our tissues. So let's support this training with some hypertrophy, right? So let's do some bodybuilding type movements, and then we'll focus on our gymnastics, and then we'll do some strength training, and we'll do some high intensity, right? And it really became this all encompassing, like, let's get good at everything we possibly can instead of just going hard and fast 7 days a week. Let's take a look at these like ebbs and flows and how we can get the most out of our training to make the best athletes possible. And so we've seen a huge shift in that. But then over time, specifically as that was happening, we saw an advancement in technology.
Yeah, and kind of speaking to what you're talking about with the development of the training styles, really that's kind of what we're talking about there. The development of, utilizing more tools to refine how we're actually getting athletes better, right? And most of that was, quite honestly, based on feel and observation, right? What are we observing as far as data that we're recording? And the data that we were recording was limited, right? Because there was no biometric data, right? Which is available now, right? There was data based on, here's a time, they're faster. Here's a weight, they're lifting more.
Right.
Do more of this training style to get
right. And
to
I
that,
remember,
right?
it's funny that you mentioned that, right? Like it was based completely on feel. I specifically remember a time in our teen lifting program where we would come in, right? And dad would ask us like, hey, do you feel heavy, medium, or light today? And that was going to determine if we did a 20 rep max, a 5 rep max, or a 3 rep max.
Nobody ever said light.
It was... well, 20 rep maxes are absolutely awful. We knew that was the worst option.
Yeah.
Regardless,
I feel heavy today. I'd like to do a
regardless
1
of how
rep
we
max.
felt, 20 reps was always out of the question. But it was heavy, medium, or light, right? And then based on how it was moving, he would maybe adjust if we were doing a 3, a 5, a 7, or a 20, right? But it was 100% based off of your feel of your perceived exertion. And I do think there's value in that, right? Because I think we're going towards the route of like what's out there now, right? So if you want to touch on that, and then we can kind of discuss, the benefits of that, what comes with it, but also what we're missing out on maybe with some of the advancement in tech.
Yeah. So I think a few things, right? Number one, when we started training, there was no technological integration with training styles. There weren't even platforms to record training. When we first started, Google Spreadsheets was the most efficient way to create a program and actually address athletes. Now, you can't go online if you're trying to get a training program. You can't go online without seeing 37 different training platforms that offer different ways to integrate into your program. So, completely different landscape as far as what was out there and what was available. But also, we're both millennials. And when you look at the Gen Z generation, which will dictate probably the next 15 years of where fitness goes in the future, Gen Z not only had all of that technological interaction, but they also depended on it for things that we never depended on it for, right? So communication, like basic communication, always had a component of technological interaction for Gen Z. Whereas for us, in high school, like I'd go to school, I had my cell phone, but I didn't text anybody until after school, or, I didn't call anybody until after school, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But for them, growing up in elementary school, getting their first cell phone and having the iPhone come about around that same time, a lot of those kids never knew any different than the communication and style of communication that was available to them with those new technologies. So I think there's a recognizing that technology is literally integrated with the human experience for Gen Zs, and that it's not going away. And how do we use that dependence a little bit on technology as a motivator, as a new, kind of influence to how we train moving forward, and then use some of the really positive things that biometric wearables can also bring to the table. So I just kind of say all of that just to preface, I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah, because it's different, right? Like when we were kids, it's just access to tech was completely different, right? Like we had to come home, hop on the computer, make sure nobody was on the cell phone or on the landline, right? Like,
gosh, dang it, you're using all of my internet.
But we had to make sure like everything was prepped. We had, there's the computer room, and we go into the computer room, nobody's on the phone, and then we can use the internet, right? Like, well, now it's like we have cell phones in our pocket, right? And computers in our pocket. We have access to every bit of information possible at any given time. So just the landscape and the access to that is so wildly different. Like I think about my daughter growing up in this type of environment, and she just doesn't know any different than access to that type of thing. Yeah. Right. And it's interesting, especially when you look at that and then how it applies to training, Because kids now, I mean, things like ChatGPT, AI out there, you can prompt them and ask them like, hey, give me a 10-day workout plan for developing physical literacy for a 10-year-old. And it'll take a couple minutes, but it'll spit out a pretty good plan, right? Like, so their access and their ability to integrate tech into fitness is so vastly different from what we had when we were growing up, which can be a good thing and it can also be a bad thing. So, when we talk about wearables, biometrics, where does that come into play?
Yeah. So I just want to say that my first cell phone actually melted in the car. That's where we were at with technology when I was in middle school. When I got my first cell phone, I left it in the car and it was 95 degrees outside and it melted the screen. So technology has come a long way since then. I remember I had to wait actually 1 year to get a new cell phone because cell phones cost a lot back then, not just like financed like they are now, where it's like $2 and you can get your iPhone for $2 a month for the next. But it was different. Access was different, right? That's the point. But when we talk about wearables have changed the game in our ability to look at not only how you feel, but what is actually physiologically going on with you as an athlete, right? Because I know, training a lot of high-level athletes outside of just youth athletes, some individual, CrossFit Games competitors over the years, an athlete at a very high level is very rarely going to tell you that they're unable to perform the training that is laid out for them. Usually as a coach, you have to tell that athlete you're unable to perform the training that is laid out for you. I'm making you do X, Y, Z, right? And a lot of the time I find with especially teenage athletes who want to please their coach, who want to train hard because that's in their head, right? A wearable that tracks biometrics, I'll just use Whoop as an example. It's going to tell me their biometrics, right? Their heart rate, their resting heart rate, their heart rate variability. It's going to tell me how they slept last night, right? And just having that data from a coaching perspective allows me to have one more piece to coaching them effectively, right? But it also allows them as an athlete to get that feedback for themselves too, right? Because I can tell you, you may have your mind set on, hey, I'm training hard today, right? But then you wake up and you don't feel great, right? And then you check your Whoop and it confirms, hey, your heart rate variability is super, super low today.
Yeah.
Your resting heart rate is, 15 beats per minute higher than normal. And your skin temperature is, raised. Maybe you're fighting off a sickness. Maybe you just had a bad night's sleep. But either way, it's a good piece to inform training. And I think integrating that into your space and frame of reference as a coach, if your athletes are utilizing them, is just a really intelligent additional tool, as you've said, to give us more insight into their training and also refine it, right? Because as AI gets more involved and they can write a really robust program for somebody, then the question becomes, well, what's the value of having a real person or a real trainer, right? And the value to me is the ability to take data and analyze it and make a informed decision on that, right? Because you can put all of that data in there, but an AI bot will never be able to actually look at a person and assess them, right?
Sure.
Where you can, as a coach with your experience, you can utilize that data and input. So
it's different tools, right? Like when we were growing up, the tools that got us into the gym were, okay, I know my best friend's going to be in there training with me, right? Like I know we're going to play a game at the end of the workout today. It's probably going to be dodgeball because that was our all-time favorite. And that kept us going. And now kids have access to these tools that not only assess how they're feeling, how they're doing, how they're going to perform today, but also kind of give them some motivation along with those other tools that we had, right? Because our main tool in terms of assessing how we were doing was just, again, like our rate of perceived exertion, right? Like, okay, I feel okay. And it can be, right? But like, just to play devil's advocate, I think the gym is one of the only remaining places where kids nowadays can learn and have a platform to learn things that they don't necessarily get anywhere else in today's life, right? Like things are so easy. They have life on easy street, especially when it comes to physicality, right?
Yeah, I was just about to say, I think they're easy in different ways than they used to be, where they used to be really hard.
Sure.
And they're hard in different ways where they used to be easy.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's kind of flip-flopped in that manner. So if you think about, Whoop, for example, telling you, okay, well, you're at 50% recoverability, or, your heart rate is slightly elevated today, your skin temperature might be higher, you shouldn't train. Well, what are we missing out on then? Mm-hmm. Are we missing out on the ability for a teenager to learn how to push themselves, how to work hard, right? Because when they get to be an adult, I can tell you there's countless nights that I stayed up putting in effort, studying, doing different things to make sure that my family was going to be in a position to where we were going to be successful,
yep.
Right? And if I didn't work hard, work through those days when I was a kid, because it was easy even then, right? That was my platform to learn tools that I wouldn't have learned elsewhere. And so if we remove that and we give them the excuse then to go, you know what? Not going to do it. Yep. I need to be at 100%, because very rarely now, and most of us can probably agree, very rarely as an adult do you ever really truly feel 100%. Right. And so now
I don't know. I have three kids and a full-time job. I feel great every single day of my entire life.
I can tell you like personally, right? Like working at the fire station, waking up 5 times after midnight, that next day, yeah, I don't feel 100%. But if I allow myself to take that day and then the next day off to where my Whoop tells me I'm at 100%, well, now I've missed out on 2 days of training and I'm not going to get that back. Right. Yeah. So there has to be a balance, which it comes to back to your point as the coach, that you look at them and go, okay, you assess it. And then the coach is then in charge of what they do or not do.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I was actually just going to bring it back to that, mm-hmm. that statement of that's why AI will not replace coaches. It will augment coaches, right? Because it will never be able to make that assessment or that judgment call where
it's another useful tool.
Where you're looking at an athlete and you go, okay, today's a day where I'm going to push them to work through something that is hard, right?
Sure.
Because what you're talking about is this generation, and it's just true, from a convenience standpoint, physically, like there's never been a generation before that could literally stay in one place and do everything. Like you could be in your home, you can work from home, mm-hmm. you can get groceries delivered to your home, you can get any restaurant delivered to your home, you get your groceries delivered there, right? You can get all of your mail comes to your house, right? You can. You literally there's never been a point in human history where humans did not have to leave their home environment.
Yeah.
But you can do that now. And you can have not only just the convenience of essential living, mm-hmm. like food, water, all of that. You can also have the convenience of everything you like and everything you want at the tip of your finger, right?
Yeah.
And I'll give a quick little like example of this, and how, kids that are growing up in this generation now sometimes don't even understand how different that is from previous generations. Like my daughters, the other day, we turned on Peacock, which had commercials, mm-hmm. and they started a show and a commercial came on. And they both turned to me. These are my 2 oldest daughters. One's 9, one is 8. I also have a 4-year-old, but my 2 oldest daughters turned to me and they said, "Dad, what is this? This isn't our show. What is this?" And I realized this is the first time they're seeing a commercial. Yeah. The first time they've been inconvenienced by something they didn't ask for, showing up on the TV.
And the
right?
funny part about that is in like 5 seconds, they could skip it.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and so it's totally, it's like 5 minor inconvenient seconds.
It's literally not what we used to deal with, which was waiting 1 week for your favorite show to come out with 1 episode. Mm-hmm. During that favorite episode, enduring 15 minutes of commercials where they broke the show into 4 5-minute sections.
Yeah.
And then they did 10 minutes of commercials
that you
in
skip.
between.
You can't skip those ones.
Right? And you couldn't skip those. And you had to learn patience for something like that. Right? And that's just a simple example of almost everything now for kids. Right?
Exactly.
So what you're talking about is sometimes that data might say, hey, they're not doing great. But understanding as a coach, when I can teach those,
when to keep the foot on the gas versus like, okay, we can coast today.
Yeah. When to say, hey, we're gonna buckle down. Today's gonna be hard.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you that rest day tomorrow. But like you're not feeling great today, and it's time to learn a lesson of sometimes in life, you're gonna feel pretty bad, and you're still gonna have to accomplish the task, right? And there's value in that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think looking at, yes, there's value in it, right? But is it necessary, right? Like, is it necessary to include things like that now in today's training or speed components in today's training? Like you look at other tech that's involved in the,
Wearables.
Yeah, wearables. Or I've seen even like clips that go on the barbell and then they read the measure of power output, the speed at which the barbell moved through like a squat or a bench press. And that should tell you what you should do that day based on the speed that you're putting out compared to your 1 rep max, right? Like those are all great tools, but as the trainer, we still need to assess the person in front of us and take in all of that information and then make a informed decision on when to push them, right? And I think that becomes increasingly important with kids because eventually they're going to become adults that may not have coaches, right? And then they're in the gym and we're teaching them how to assess, okay, yeah, my whoop says I'm at 85% today, but you know what? I can still get these 3 pieces of my workout done, right? Because they know that Coach Connor or Coach Keegan would have been in front of them saying like, yeah, but let's do this. You know what I mean?
Yep. I think that's a really good point. I also think when we talk about human interaction, right? And you use the term tools, which I really like because that tools are really the distinguishing factor of what makes us human, right? And separates us from animals, basically, right? Our utilization of tools in order to move ourselves forward as a species, right? And taking something like tech and going, well, it's not the way we've always done it, so we're just going to put it to the back burner, I think is a huge mistake.
Sure.
I also think, our goal, obviously representatives of Brand X, but also just as people who want to see the next generation be healthier, stronger, fitter, faster than we were before and more capable, right? So that they can create a better world. We have to understand also where they're coming from when they come into the gym, right? Their interaction has been with tech more so than it has been with face-to-face interaction like us,
100%,
right?
Yeah.
So I think that tech can also be the intro for somebody to get into fitness, right? And can be utilized as a way to reach kids who don't want to come into, and teens who don't want to come into a gym because they're embarrassed or they're scared or they don't want to look back. They don't want to look like they don't know what they're doing and they're fearful of that, right? Tech can be a really great tool, right? There's tons of different to kind of briefly transition into the fitness environment and the space that you're creating with tech. One of the things that I do, I work for a company called Active Solutions, and we do fitness center design and equipment. And one of the things that I'm seeing utilized by a lot of gyms to draw new members in is basically contactless training environments where somebody can come in, they can train on, let's say, a bay. We have one called the Exponential Bay, but you can click and do a class and it'll run you through a basic class. Now, is that as good as a trainer? Absolutely not. This is an intro to fitness. It's a great way to get them in, feeling confident, maybe losing a little bit of weight, maybe having those first training experiences that are positive. And now they go, okay, well, I have some goals, right? Okay, well, in order to achieve a goal in fitness, you're probably going to need a trainer to to really tailor that training program
that
for
experience,
you, right?
yeah.
So it can kind of be that entry level, hey, look, we want this to be for everyone, and it is for everyone. So we're going to make this environment inviting to you in that way. Sure. So I'm seeing that, and I think the gyms that are recognizing that that's on the horizon and investing in that will be the gyms ultimately that that are very, very successful because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you even look at just equipment sales, for example, right? Like the mirror that, do you remember when that was going around?
Yeah.
Yeah, the mirror hangs on the wall and it's got cable machines that come out of it, right? And a personal trainer, so you can do it in the comfort of your home. You don't have to be embarrassed, right? But you can learn some different movements, and you have a personal trainer right there talking to you. You can watch yourself while you do the movements, the lifts, whatever. Things like that. And then Peloton, right? Like, I think those are just going to be more and more common, especially for youth as they get older, right? Like the importance of tech in their lives, like you mentioned at the start, versus ours at the start of our lives, right? Now it's definitely fully integrated as a part of our lives too, but the importance for them to learn how to utilize these tools is what we want to give them as coaches.
Yeah.
Right? Because I can think back to when I was a child, right? And think back to school, and you probably got told this too, right? But when we were doing math, I had teachers that would look at me and be like, Keegan, you're never going to have a calculator in your pocket. So we got to do this test without the calculator, right? And I'm grateful for the lessons I learned in that I had to learn how to work hard, right? How to think through things and utilize my previous knowledge, my previous experiences to work through those math problems. But turns out, as I got older, I have a calculator in my pocket. And I have a computer where I can go to Google and search anything I want and learn how to do it within just a matter of seconds, right? Like I do YouTube University to fix things around my house all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Like I can do this without a contractor because I have the tools in my pocket that'll teach me to do those things, right? And then I save thousands of dollars because of that, right? And so just understanding that these tools are going to be available to kids, and instead of not allowing them to use them, teaching them how and when to use them, but also teaching them how to work hard becomes extremely important as a coach, right? Like not shying away from the values and the experiences that they're going to get from working hard, right? But also integrating like some use of that. I think personally there should be a AI class in high school and college now, right? Like teachers are up in arms that kids are using Chat GPT to write their essays. Well, that's just going to be a tool that they have available to them throughout their entire lives now. That's just going to be a tool that they have access to, just like we have calculators now.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I think if we teach them to utilize them effectively as coaches, as teachers, as parents, they're going to be better off for it. Because if we just deny them the ability to use those things, they're going to be behind by the time they become adults.
Yeah. And just like I said before, the use of tools it's integral to the development of humankind as a species.
Sure.
Right. It's what progressed us forward at every stage. Right. And AI is a tool. Wearables are a tool. Technological integrations with training are tools. Right. And how can we take those things, utilize them, and then adapt as trainers, right? Because there's things that we used to do that we no longer have to do, right? And I'll take it and put it into a completely different context, right? Like we no longer have to have horses draw a carriage across the country because we have cars, right? We didn't go, nope, not using those. Kids, you're not allowed to learn how to drive. We just said, okay, well, we got to adapt to this new technology and learn how to integrate it. And every new technology up until this point, we can objectively say has pretty much moved us in the right direction, right? We've gone further, and every generation has had more opportunity because of that. So I think on the fitness side of things, not utilizing technology, not utilizing AI, not utilizing wearables will be the fastest way for you to make yourself obsolete as a coach, and the fastest way to ensure your gym won't be successful. So I think not leaning on those too much and saying, hey, they're everything, but learning how to blend that in
and
embrace the
change.
Make it a value add for you is the best way.
Yeah. Embrace the change, take the data and utilize that as a coach, how to integrate that, right? And thank goodness for the people that did all those things before us, right?
Yeah.
Like, thank goodness for the people that did all the math and figured things out, because I'm not smart enough for that, but I'm smart enough to use a calculator, smart enough to use AI, right? And it's pretty amazing, I think, how far we've come. It's funny when you think about it, right? Like, we used to have on the calendar right behind you, we used to have that, and now we have Wi-Fi. Like, there was ponds and rocks and mountains, and that was it. And now there's Chat GPT. I don't know how it got here, right? I'm not smart enough for that, but I am smart enough to utilize it.
Yep.
And so I think just as coaches, it would be in our best interest to figure out ways to utilize it. So I think that's all we got for today, but thank you guys for your time. Hope you guys enjoyed the Youth Fitness Podcast.
Welcome to the Athlete Coach Network, a new connection-based training platform that breaks down regional barriers and connects coaches and athletes anytime, anywhere. You're an athlete and love to push yourself. Who's guiding you? As an athlete, you can filter and search our library to find the perfect coach, or sign up for a membership to get video feedback and comments from our coaches all over the world. As a coach, you can set up your profile and advertise your credentials, set your own price for video reviews or direct messaging to ensure your rates reflects the value of your time. Welcome to the Athlete Coach Network, and welcome to the future of sports coaching.
That was the Youth Fitness Podcast, topics on youth fitness with a focus on doing what's best for kids. Brought to you by the Martin family, the developers of the Brand X Method and the Athlete Coach Network. We hope you guys enjoyed that episode and you listen for more.